Good day, everyone. I am Mark Vello, and you're listening to Headline News. Trump approves state of emergency in Washington, D.C. The White House press office announced on Monday, January 11th, in response to the 59th presidential inauguration, which took place from January 11th to January 24th, that President Donald Trump approved a state of emergency in Washington, D.C., ordering federal assistance to supplement the region's response efforts. The following is Trump's statement approving a state of emergency in the District of Columbia. Today, President Donald J. Trump declared that an emergency exists in the District of Columbia and ordered federal assistance to supplement the district's response efforts due to the emergency conditions resulting from the 59th presidential inauguration from January 11th to January 24th, 2021. The President's action authorizes the Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to coordinate all disaster relief efforts, which have the purpose of alleviating the hardship and suffering caused by the emergency on the local population, and to provide appropriate assistance for required emergency measures, authorized under Title V of the Stafford Act to save lives and to protect property and public health and safety, and to lessen or avert the threat of a catastrophe in the District of Columbia. Specifically, FEMA is authorized to identify, mobilize, and provide, at its discretion, equipment and resources necessary to alleviate the impacts of the emergency. Emergency protective measures limited to direct federal assistance will be provided at 100% federal funding. FEMA Administrator Pete Gaynor has appointed Thomas J. Fargione as the federal coordinating official for potential emergencies and disaster recovery efforts. On the same day, Chad F. Wolf, Acting Secretary of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security under the Trump administration, abruptly announced his resignation. Following Wolf's resignation, FEMA Administrator Gaynor will serve as the interim head of the Department of Homeland Security. President Trump has declared a state of emergency in 5 states since October last year, including Louisiana on October 27th, Mississippi on October 28th, Florida on November 11th, Tennessee on January 5th, and Washington, D.C. on January 11th. U.S. Trade Chief calls on Biden to maintain tariffs on China. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer has urged the incoming Biden administration to keep tariffs on China, while crediting President Donald Trump for taking the regime in Beijing to task for its spate of unfair trade practices that have disadvantaged the United States. We transformed the way people think about trade, and we transformed the way the models are, Lighthizer told The Wall Street Journal in an interview published on January 11th. My hope is that will continue. The Trump administration has imposed unilateral tariffs on $370 billion worth of Chinese goods, citing as motivation various actions on China's part that include intellectual property theft from U.S. companies, forced technology transfers, unfairly subsidizing Chinese firms, and restricting access to China's markets. Other moves by President Trump include delisting Chinese telecommunications companies on the New York Stock Exchange, blacklisting some Chinese companies, including China's largest computer chip maker, and banning transactions with Chinese connected apps. Trump's tenor on trade helped shift attitudes among many towards seeing China as not just a competitor, but as an adversary, Lighthizer said. We changed the way people think about China, he told The Wall Street Journal. We want a China policy that thinks about the geopolitical competition between the United States and an adversary, an economic adversary. Following Trump's tariffs, Beijing signed a Phase 1 trade deal nearly a year ago, promising to boost purchases of U.S. agricultural and manufactured goods, energy, and services by $200 billion above the 2017 levels over 2 years. Since signing the agreement, China has fallen far behind on its purchase commitments while doubling down on mercantilist policies. As of October, Beijing's purchases of U.S. goods and services were about half the level the Phase 1 deal requires on a prorated annual basis, according to the Peterson Institute for International Economics. In an interview with Reuters last month, Lighthizer urged the Biden administration to hold China accountable for its Phase 1 commitments. "I would hold their feet to the fire on Phase 1, he said. "I would use the dispute settlement process to resolve specific issues. I would keep the tariffs in place, for sure." He said a change in course on tariffs would be a sign of a strategic shift in thinking about China. "I think if you see the tariffs dissipating, that's a signal that we're not serious about understanding that China is a strategic adversary," Lighthizer said at the time. Biden told a New York Times columnist in December that he didn't plan any immediate moves to change the tariffs on Chinese goods, while the Wall Street Journal cited senior Biden advisors as saying the president-elect would wait with tariff-related decisions until after consultations with U.S. allies. It's part of Biden's proposal to create what he calls a summit of democracies that would ward off autocratic creep, including by China, among other objectives. For example, technology companies, which benefit from the fruits of democracy, should make concrete pledges for how they can ensure their algorithms and platforms are not empowering the surveillance state, facilitating repression in China and elsewhere, spreading hate, spurring people to violence, and remaining susceptible to misuse, Biden said on a website that details the plan. In his Wall Street Journal interview, Lighthizer said Biden's plan carried the risk of letting other countries hamstring U.S. actions on China and cause policy to become mired in endless discussions. Lighthizer also urged steps to make it more difficult for U.S. companies to offshore operations and said the World Trade Organization, WTO, should be weakened so that it can't override U.S. trade policies with respect to China. Since his appointment as top U.S. trade official, Lighthizer has blamed the WTO for failing to curb China's trade abuses and rampant subsidies to state firms. He said that there's now broad support for the need to reform the WTO. Twitter shares fall 12% after deleting Trump's account. Shares of social media outlet Twitter experienced a significant decline following the removal of President Donald Trump's account, closing down at 6.4% on Monday, January 11th, after the company's shares fell as much as 12.3%. On Friday, January 8th, Twitter announced that it had deleted Trump's account, which had about 89 million followers and more than 57,000 tweets. Trump was in the top 6 most followed Twitter users before his account was deleted. Before being censored, Trump posted the following 2 tweets, which Twitter said violated its glorification of violence policy. The first post reads, "The 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America first, and make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form." Also, the president posted, "To all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. Twitter's removal of Trump's account has sparked great controversy. Trump's supporters believe that Twitter's practice violates freedom of speech, and some have launched a campaign related to the boycott of Twitter. which may be one of the reasons that triggered a drop in the market's investment expectations in the company. Twitter will announce its fourth quarter 2020 results on February 4th. Fox News reported that Citigroup analyst Jason Bazinet said in a January 7th report that Twitter's daily active users appeared to be slightly down after the U.S. election. This concludes today's broadcast. Thank you for your time, and stay tuned for the next Headline News.